So welcome everyone to Psalms for Life, in which we take a different chapter of Psalms each week and explore and discuss them, illuminated by the teachings of Rebbe Nachman of Breslov and our sages and tzaddikim. Thank you to Esther Elagorovich for sponsoring this class. It should be a merit and a source of bracha for her and her family. And today's dedication is a dedication for a Refuah Sheleimah to Jana Bas Tzilia. Please Hashem, may she have a complete and full and speedy recovery. Later on in the class, we will be saying Tehillim together. Naomi Batyev, she's here, she will lead us. And at that point, we will have other dedications. Okay, today's psalm is Psalm 49. And it's a psalm that has quite a few segulos, and I put some of them together for you. The first thing, it's a psalm to realize that material things have no permanence. So this psalm can give us this awareness about the material world. The next segula, it's a psalm to prevent or cure kadachas, or kadochas really in Yiddish, but they've actually taken the Hebrew word and changed it to Hebrew rather than the other way around, from what I understand. I don't know how accurate that is, but that is a type of fever usually translated as malaria. And it's a segula to be cured from that. Okay, so we are going to continue. Okay, so this is a rather difficult psalm because it encourages us to examine our relationship with money, not just any money, our own money. It's a psalm by Korach's sons and redacted, of course, by David. And Korach's sons saw how wealth ruined their father and corrupted him. We all know the story of Korach. He attempted a rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu, and his rebellion, he railed against Moshe and Aaron. He accused them of nepotism. He accused them of not being any greater in halacha or Torah than he was. And of course, we know that the earth went down, opened up from beneath him, and he fell down into a pit. What we need to also know about Korach, that the Midrash tells us, is that he was Pharaoh's treasurer. And Yosef Hatzadik had amassed all the wealth of Egypt, if you remember from the story of our Torah, our history, and he assembled it into a treasury for Pharaoh during the times of famine. And he filled the treasury with silver and gold, as well as foodstuffs, but silver and gold were the real treasure. Korach, in the root of his arrogance, he raided the treasury when we left Egypt, when the Jewish people left Egypt. And he believed that because he had all this wealth, he was greater than any other Jew, including Moses. All right. Now, he believed that he had more wisdom than Moses, more power, and so on. Now, I'm going to discuss more about that later on. Rav Hirsch tells us that the previous Psalms of Korach are primarily directed towards the Jewish people, although there are mentions of Gentiles and advice for them. But this psalm is truly universal. This is a psalm that both Jews and non-Jews need to study, learn, say, and get the message from. And that message is how to develop a healthy relationship with wealth, your own wealth, okay? And other people's as well, because we should have we should have an understanding of other people's money too. Now, each person, says Rav Hirsch, must use his wealth for spiritual purpose here on earth. Since, as they say in my lingo, you can't take it with you. However, Rav Hirsch reminds us that giving tzedakah, giving charity, especially to someone poor, someone struggling, when you do this, you're actually taking the wealth with you, because you are taking you've bought that mitzvah, so to speak. Now, Rav Hirsch speaks very plainly, okay? And there's a lot of really direct, not tippy-toeing advice throughout the psalm from our sages. Rav Hirsch says that a person who devotes his life to amassing wealth and seeking pleasure, that it is possible his life won't continue in the next world. Because once the world is over, if your whole world is material, that might be it for you, okay? Also, we recite Psalm 49 after the services each day in a house of Shiva, in a house of mourning, for this reason, to remind us that this world is temporal. This world ends for us at some point. Now, our sages tell us that this particular psalm will be very relevant to us when? Right now. During Chevlei Mashiach, the birth pangs of Mashiach, when although some Jews will be wealthy, many are struggling just to make ends meet. And the message is to rich and poor, Jew and non-Jew, and we all have a responsibility to help those less fortunate than ourselves. Now, we know the halacha, and we'll mention it as we go through this psalm, about how to give, what to give. I won't go into too many details. There are classes and books on that. But we also need to be motivated in spirit as well as just following the halacha. So this week's Parshas Terumah. And in Parshas Terumah, the Torah tells us that Hashem said, speak to the Jewish people and let them take for me a terumah. A terumah is like a contribution, okay? And this was, of course, to build the Mishkan, the sanctuary, the holy sanctuary. And the Jews are assembled in the desert. You can actually, if you want, you can look to my my video from, I think, last year or the year before on Parshas Terumah, and you can learn about how the Mishkan was built and how the Jews gave money and items in order to build it. So Reb Noson explains that the Terumah, why did Hashem said, take from me a contribution? So Reb Noson explains that the next verse, which is, take my terumah from every person whose heart motivates us to give, motivates him to give, means that the terumah must be given for Hashem and not self-aggrandizement, okay? Not to make oneself greater. And in order to do that, we have to, each of us, when we give, connect our hearts with the mitzvah of giving, okay? So some people can easily give because it's the halacha, but it hurts them to give. They feel a resentment to give. Some people give with their hearts, but they don't follow the halacha. So the advice from our sages is we have to have both. And as Rebbe Nachman says, it's yes, you have to follow what the Torah says about how to give charity, but at the same time, you have to bring your heart into it as well, because Hashem wants the heart. Okay, we're going to continue with the first verse. Lamanatseach livnei Korach mizmor, for the conductor by the sons of Korach, a psalm, okay, or a mizmor, a song, okay, and of course I mentioned this was a universal song to Jews and non-Jews alike. Shimu zos kol ha'amim, ha'azinu kol yoshvei cheled. Okay. Hear this, all you nations, give ear, all you dwellers of decaying earth. So Rashi tells us that this word cheled Okay, this idea of cheled, of decaying earth, Rashi compares it to rust. So this is a hint to us that, hey, this world doesn't last, and that everything eventually decays. Now, God willing, Mashiach's going to come. We will experience Olam Haba in this lifetime. Please Hashem, that's what we long for. But in essence, this world doesn't last. Okay, we're going to continue. Gam b'nei Adam, gam b'nei ish yachad ashir ve'ev yon. Okay. Even sons of Adam, even sons of man, together, rich man, poor man. Okay. So our sages say that this verse refers to Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel, okay, the sons of Adam. They divided the world between them according to the Midrash, and Cain took the land. I'm going to say Cain and Abel, actually, because I want everybody to understand. Cain took the land, and Abel took the things that could be moved. They fought, and Cain said, "You're standing on my land." That's what he said to his brother. And Abel said, "Hey, you're wearing my clothing because I own all the possessions that can be moved around." And they argued, and neither wanted to share. Rashi says that this is the story of possessiveness. Now, he also says that the story refers to the sons of Noah and the story of Ham, the son who, as the Medrash tells us very disturbingly, castrated his own father. Why? To prevent him from having any more children, so he wouldn't have to share his inheritance. And that Noah would no longer be able to leave any inheritance to anyone except the three sons he already had. Okay. Our great, most wise Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, says that this verse refers to the rich man and the poor man, who both can fall prey to the love of money. A poor person can equally love money as a rich person, okay? And sometimes even more because they don't have it. So, it's a yearning for something they don't have. So what does King Solomon say? He says this in Koheles: a lover of money will never be satisfied with money. Okay. He won't be able to, hold on one second. He won't be able to ever feel full. Okay. It's like almost like an addiction. You're never sad. You have a moment of pleasure and then it goes away. There are people who have, I'm going to give an example, a shopping addiction. Okay. They go, they shop. They get the designer this and the designer that, and they accumulate and they amass, and then they feel empty. Okay. And that's what our wise king is talking about. Rebbe Nachman teaches, and this is relevant to the whole psalm, and it's relevant to each of us, that there are three foundational desires we're all born with them to a certain extent. The desire for physical intimacy, the desire for food, very hard also to get rid of, and the desire for money. And it's difficult with these three desires. There are other desires too, desires for power, and then anger is a form of desire for fame, and so on and so forth. We can put those aside because these are the three root desires, because we need them in order to live. We have to be physically intimate in order to procreate, in order to fill the earth with beautiful children. And therefore, that desire is implanted within us. Okay, men, not just men, women too. Then we have the desire for food. We need food to live. It's very difficult. This is why, by the way, if anybody is familiar with the fields of mental health and addiction, treating eating disorders is one of the most difficult things to do. And that's because you have to eat. It's not like you can abstain from eating. It's impossible. However, because of today's environment, there's cooking shows and glossy pictures everywhere of food, and everybody's a bigger macher on this type of spice and that type of herb and this type of cuisine. And it's very easy to get caught up in this, the same way it is to be caught up in physical intimacy, because that enticement's all over. Hey, you have a phone, you have that enticement in the palm of your hand as well, okay? But the other desire is money, and we have to have money. We have to live on money. But the Rebbe explains that not that we should be ascetic and to reject the world, because we live in the material world, but we should not increase or cultivate or build our desires for these three things. People don't think about this so much. Money has become totally permissible in the secular world to lust after it even. It's even considered a virtue if you're chasing after money. You go, you succeed, you make a lot of money. Great. Okay, and we accord honor and respect to that in the secular world. Okay. Now, of course, a Jew sees this as a blessing directly from God, because everything comes down from the pipelines from Hashem. And we know that everything should be coming down evenly, for everyone should be equally wealthy, every Jew. But because of the state of the world and the state of the constrictions in the world and the fact that Mashiach isn't here yet, it's unequal. Okay, when Mashiach comes, it's all going to be equalized. But it's unequal right now. And the Rebbe explains to us that this desire can take people over. Again, these base desires, we have to have them all. If you don't have any desire for money, you're not going to go get a job, okay, and work and earn what you need to pay your bills. So that desire, again, is very essential. But when is enough of the desire enough? Okay. I'm talking specifically about money, not material things, but just money. We'll talk about material things throughout the rest of the psalm. So this psalm asks us really difficult questions. I do want you to know, I spent a lot of time discussing this with my husband about how to present this psalm, because for some people, this psalm is going to be really hard when they hear the commentary. All right. And again, we need all these desires, including the desire for money. We have to live, okay? And we have to live in this material world. But what's appropriate for one person might not be appropriate for the other. And what's appropriate for a Jew is always to think about, am I just focused on my taivas, my desires, my cravings? All right, let's continue. Okay, we're on Dalet, by the way, 4, verse 4. Pi edaber chachmos, v'hagus libi tivunos. Okay. My mouth will speak wisdoms, chachmos is like plural, and the meditation of my heart are understanding, tivunos, insightful. Okay. So here it seems to me that David is speaking about wisdom, referring to the meditations of the heart. The meditations of the heart, we say in Judaism that our hearts also have thoughts, okay? And the thoughts of the heart, okay, are sometimes they're expressed as feelings, but they're connected to the thoughts of our mind. It's not necessarily two separate things, but they act in tandem with each other. And the thoughts of the heart are deeper meditations, specifically what King David's referring to here. And when we have deep meditations, not just above the neck intellectual meditations, let's say you leave this class today and you start thinking about what all our amazing sages and tzaddikim said, and you think about it, and maybe you make hitbodedut about it, talk to Hashem about it, or you read more about it, you've had a meditation of the heart. And that leads to insight. And what we need to have insight in, not into anybody else's business, into our own business, what each of us is doing in terms of our desires. Okay. Rebbe Nachman in Likutei Moran Tinyana, lesson 7, says that the initial letters of this verse spell Halif, spell halifot, okay, which means, it means here, it can mean exchanges or replacements. Chalifos or chalifot. When we speak words of Torah wisdom and understanding with others, or we support those who do, we are making a replacement for ourselves in this world, meaning that we are leaving something behind of great value in this world. As I mentioned in the beginning, okay, you can't take it with you, right? There's no pachets and tachrichim, no pachets and burial shrouds. That's my husband's line. Okay, so what do you take with you? We know a Jew takes their mitzvahs with them. Okay, but the Rebbe is saying you make a replacement when you leave behind words of Torah that you have given over. So everyone's capable of sharing words of Torah. Okay, every single one of us. Okay, and supporting those who do. And this is a replacement for us, so to speak. Okay, now, again, this verse is about the meditations of our heart. And I mentioned hitbodedut, but the Rebbe encourages us at the basic level to just talk to Hashem as if he's our very best friend. But he also wants us to not just make a simple hitbodedut. He wants us to also make something called hitbonenut at the simple level. There's a Kabbalistic hitbonenut, but this is a simple one, where we contemplate and we think, just like this verse directs us to. That's how we gain understanding. That's how we gain insight. And most of us spend more time thinking about what we're going to have for dinner than we do about our own personal spiritual growth, okay, and where we're headed, and so on. And the Rebbe's saying, no, think about it, and then talk about it with Hashem, okay? And that's what that verse is into. Okay, also, by the way, if you have young children at home, you should contemplate their spiritual growth. That's the primary thing we should be contemplating with our children, their spiritual growth. Meditate each day a little bit. The Lubavitcher Rebbe famously directed his Hasidim, he directed all Jews actually, but Hasidim specifically, to every day a parent should sit down for 30 minutes and discuss their child's Torah education, their spiritual education. Yeah. So incorporate some of that into your life if you have young children at home. Okay, we're going to continue with verse 5. Hey, Ate lemashal azni, eftach bechinur chidasi. I will incline my ear to parable. With a harp, I will solve my riddle. So the simple meaning is, in which we can clearly hear David's voice, is I will listen to parables. What's a parable? An instructive story. And then I will play sacred music to help raise me up spiritually and calm me mentally. Why? So then I can solve the riddles of life. Now, we know that Rebbe Nachman famously told stories and parables and so on. And he also encouraged us to make music and to sing and so on, and to make these all part of our spiritual service. So we can see that there's a nugget of origin here with King David. All right, we'll continue. We're on Vav, we're on verse 6. Lama ira bimeira avon akeva yisubeni. Why should I be fearful in days of evil? The sin I walk upon, I trod upon, surrounds me. So Rashi and King Solomon say, evil days are days of old age, when people are frail and approaching death. And intelligent people are more cognizant than ever of the missteps they made. Okay, hopefully we're thinking about these missteps when we're young, but not all of us are so fortunate. Our sages say there is an oddity associated with this, that in old age, we lose our desire for intimacy and food. Yet those who have a desire for money, it never leaves them, which is why you see that 85-year-olds play the lottery. Okay, they do. Because this desire doesn't leave a person. It's very, very interesting, unless they work on it. So Radak says that the days of evil actually refers to all of a person's life if he's mainly involved in material pursuits. Now, what are the sins I trod upon? So these are the sins that we just don't think about. We don't appreciate whether they're valuable or not. So for example, the sin of not being dan l'chaschus, the sin of not giving someone the benefit of the doubt, the sin of withholding help from someone, the sin of lack of kindness or respect, like little sins that are still sins, okay? There are many of them. I'm not going to name them all. And these things don't seem like sins to us. They just seem like the give and take of relationships in life. But there are mitzvahs about how we should treat each other, think about each other. There are mitzvahs about everything, commandments about everything. So as Jews, we are taught that we can't ascertain the value of a mitzvah. So these little sins we walk along, they might be as great or greater than the mitzvah, those mitzvahs that are associated with the things I mentioned, or whatever little mitzvahs that we walk all over, might be as great as the mitzvah of Shabbat. Okay, so that's why we have to educate ourselves. Again, step by step, little by little. As Rebbe Nachman says, a little bit is also good. Okay, again, this psalm is not this light, exhilarating. It's just not one of those. It's one with an important message, though. So if we're seeing it now, and we're seeing it, as I mentioned in the beginning, during the week of Parashat Terumah, then there's a hashgacha pratis here for each of us to really think about all these things. Okay. Now, in the medrash, in the medrash, it's actually Bamidbar, so it's a medrash for Bamidbar Rabbah. I mentioned that Korach's attitude was that money's his and it makes him wiser, smarter, better looking, everything than everyone else. Okay. But Hashem actually spoke to Korach. Korach received a prophecy. You have to remember, back then everybody had a measure of prophecy. And he said that if a person amasses wealth destined for the benefit and use of all of Klal Yisrael, which basically is all wealth, shockingly enough, he warned that Korach would never have the chance to enjoy his wealth. Now we know what happened to Korach. Okay, so we're going to continue with the next verse. Okay, I'm going to skip a few commentaries because I see we are running behind. Okay. Habotchim al chelam uvarov ashram yishalalu. Okay. Those who rely on their possessions and their great wealth, they boast. Okay. So Hamiiri teaches, he says like this: Oi, woe unto those who put their faith in their possessions. This is another really heavy commentary here, but he says, what help is your wealth when you face the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death? They don't discriminate between rich and poor. Now, I think here that when I read this verse the first time, I really thought of the guys who think they're running the World Economic Forum, the WHO, the UN. That's who I thought of. These people are powerful and loaded with money. I didn't think of any of us, okay? This is who I thought of. Because again, as I mentioned before, this is said to be a universal psalm. That's what Rav Hirsch says. So they're trying to control everyone else. These are the elites. And they really believe that their money gives them the power to tell us to eat insects and to own nothing and you'll be happy, but you won't own anything. And we're going to force you to take vaccines, whether you want them or not, and so on and so forth. Okay. These people have elected themselves. Nobody elected them. They've appointed themselves. They've anointed themselves. Okay. They have what's called a Messiah complex. Okay. And that's who I think of when I read this verse, because they're arrogant. They're boasting. And if you've ever seen anything or read anything about them, you know that they're beyond arrogant. And unfortunately, there are Jews among them, even one Israeli, which is really, really disturbing. Okay, let's continue. Ach lo fado yifte ish lo yiten lelohim kafro. But a brother, he cannot redeem, nor can he redeem himself. He can't give his ransom to Hashem. Okay. So he can't, a person like this, no person can save anyone, including himself, from death. These people, they have them frozen. They have their bodies frozen in liquid nitrogen when they die in these tanks. They pay millions of dollars for this because they think they're going to be able to be revived. And sometimes, though, they love themselves so much, they won't even pay a ransom to save themselves from death. They love their money so much, they won't even pay a ransom for this. There's some people who love their money more than themselves. I mentioned that a few times ago when I spoke about the Shema. So it's like, this is craziness, okay? This is a desire brought to its extreme, which is why we all have to work on our desires at the root, when they're small enough to be manageable. Okay. All right, let's continue. Okay. V'yekar pidyon nafsha v'chadal le'olam. Okay. Too precious is the pidyon nefesh, the redemption of their soul, and it's unattainable forever. Okay, so they can't redeem their souls, but we can. Sincere correction, we work on ourselves. Do tshuva, we return to Hashem. Again, not everything all at once. We work on ourselves little by little. We're only human. Okay. Combined with giving tzedakah achieves true redemption and forgiveness. And then it won't be unattainable. Okay, that's the answer to that. Okay. V'chi od lanetzach lo yireh hashachas. Okay, can he live forever and not see the pit? And we know that Korach literally fell into the pit. The Zohar tell us that the root of all of this is that Korach literally openly denied that Hashem created the world. Okay. He said he believed in Hashem, but Hashem spoke to him, but he didn't believe Hashem created the world. Okay. In other words, the hint here is that Korach believed that he was the creator of everything, including his own destiny. It's actually a very American concept. You make yourself, you make your own life. You're a self-made man or a self-made woman, and so on. And that's not really, we know that's not really what happens. It's that Hashem gives a bracha, blessing for that to happen, and he provides for that to happen. But what we also know is that really not a Jewish concept when it comes to the material world. When it comes to working on yourself spiritually, yes. Okay, then you get a lot of credit. Okay, the Medrash says that this pit was created specially for Korach. Okay, but this psalm is speaking to all of us. I mean, it's speaking to all of us. Okay, again, this is not one of those warm fuzzy ones. Okay. Ki yireh chachami yamusu yachad kasil vavar yovedu ve'azvu la'acherim chelan. Okay. Though he sees that wise men die, together the foolish and senseless perish and leave over their wealth and possession to others. Okay. So wise men die, but they've spent their wealth on serving Hashem and mitzvahs and tzedakah. Okay. So, but this person, I don't want to say any names, but let's imagine your worst WEF guy, okay, or gal. He sees that wise people die and foolish people and senseless people perish and leave over their wealth and possession to others. He can watch other people go through this. So it seems to puzzle all the commentators that these people see rich and poor people die and they don't take their wealth with them, yet that's what they're focused on, and power either, and their power too. So foolish people, says our commentary, are people who don't want to be deprived of any pleasure. They're going to fight for every pleasure. They're going to cultivate the best tastes and seek every pleasure possible. That's foolish people. Senseless people are people who just live like animals, and they just grab whatever they can. Okay. Yet all of them die without their money. So also, our sages say, people leave everything to their children, and their children, that's what the Talmud says, not me, rarely use it wisely. There are exceptions, but in general, our sages say through the Talmud, don't leave your children everything you've got, okay? Because just having it handed to them could be problematical for them. Reish Lakish says, okay, he left over only a bushel. He was wealthy. He left only a bushel of spices for his heirs. And he considered that he wasn't that wealthy, excuse me. I'm thinking of someone else as I'm saying this. And he considered the time he spent acquiring this. Okay, spices were valuable back then. He considered it a waste of time. Okay. So the goal is to impress on your children that receiving an inheritance means they've received responsibilities, stewardship, not to increase the wealth, but to distribute it through tzedakah. And through this, they'll be blessed with even more wealth. Now, I'm going to tell you a story that Rav Elimelech Biderman just told. And it's a famous story. A very wealthy man passed away, and his children got a contact from the Chevra. His children got a contract from the Chevra to Chadisha that the burial society, they found a letter in his room. His children didn't see it, which was a will which said, "Bury me in my socks." And his children said, "Yes, our father said you have to bury him in his socks." Okay. Yes, the burial shrouds, but he wants his socks too. And we have to do that. So the children fought with the Chevra Kadisha, and the Chevra Kadisha said, listen, this is against the Torah. A person has to be buried with nothing. And socks are a possession. We can't do it. And they fought and they fought. And finally, the Chevra Kadisha, the rabbi, and everybody convinced the family that he couldn't be buried in his socks. So the children came home. And behind the first letter where the first will was, they found another letter on the mantle. And it was addressed to all of them. And they opened it up. And it was from their father. And their father said to them, "My dear children, I want you to understand I'm leaving you an inheritance. But a person can't even take his socks with him." So that's what Rav Biderman told for this week's Parashat Terumah. So I thought it was a cute story. I actually heard that this was a true story. I don't know. Okay, let's continue. Kirbam batemo leolam, mishkanosam lador vador, kara'u vishmosam ale adamos. Okay. So they imagine their houses are forever. Their dwellings last for generation after generation, and they proclaim their name upon the lands. Again, just picture the baddies of the WEF if you'd like to. Because the sages say that this is what the wicked people do. They build monuments and cities and name them after themselves, okay? Think of Tiberia, okay? Tiberius named that after himself. Or Alexandria, which Alexander named after himself. And we know that Alexandria didn't last, and Tiberia only lasts because it's a town of Torah. It's where there are many Torah scholars and so on. Al-Sheikh says that Absalom, if you remember from earlier lessons, we talked about all King David's sons, but Absalom was kind of a violent guy, not a particularly pleasant person. He built a pillar in Eretz Yisrael and named it after himself. Today it's called Avshalom's pillar, Absalom in English. Why did he build a pillar after himself? Because he saw his 3 kids were no good. Okay. They amounted to nothing. And this was his responsibility. He was selfish. He was small-minded. And he saw that his children turned out the same. He didn't educate them properly about what was really important, about what value should be. And so he felt his children couldn't be a monument to him. They couldn't continue to carry on his legacy. It's very sad. Okay. If anybody here has young children at home, teach them good values. All right. We'll continue. Va'adam bikar bal yalin nimshal kabehemos nidmu. Okay. So, but a man does not rest or repose in his glory. He's compared to the dumb animals, the animals who can't talk. So Ibn Ezra says that a person thinks his glory is money. But when he's gone from this material world, he's like a dumb animal. Okay. I have read this psalm so many times over the past few days. And it's like every time I read it, I'm like, oh, it's painful. Okay. Zedarkam kesolamo. Va'acharehem befihem yirtzu salah. Okay, this is the way of, this is their way. The folly is theirs, the foolishness is theirs, and after them, they will talk about it with their mouth forever. So they think that their way is the right way. And like Korach, they deny anyone else's way is right, despite the fact that they're all wrong. Again, picture the WEF guys, if you will. Okay. We're the elite. Of course, you are the, whatever. Okay. Katson lishol shatu maves yirem vayirdu vam yisharim leboker vitzuram levalos shaol mizavul lo. Okay. Like sheep, they are destined to the grave. Death will devour them. The upright will rule over them in the morning, and their form shall erode the lower world from being a shelter for them. So basically, what this is saying is that they're going to the bad place. Okay, we won't do too much commentary on that. I know that we're running out of time. Okay, now we get a breath of fresh air from King David. Finally, it's much needed. Ach Elohim yifte nafshi miyad sheol ki yikacheni salah. But Hashem is going to redeem my soul from the power of the grave, because he's going to take me forever. So David's telling us, look, I didn't let this world distract me from the ultimate truth. Okay. I did not let this world convince me that this world was all there was. And therefore, Hashem is going to redeem my soul, take it from the worst place, and lift me up to him. Okay. So he has, remember we spoke in the beginning about I think it was the Radak who commented that the afterlife, okay, might not be here for those who only believe in the material. They think there's nothing after. So there's a lot of question of belief, and also our actions, obviously. But this is saying, look where David focused his thoughts and what he got. He's with Hashem forever. Okay. Also, Techias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead. Okay. I would okay, first I would like Mashiach to come. I'd like to experience that. But later on, when that happens, okay, God willing, all of this will be soon. Who wouldn't want to experience that? We want to be with Hashem forever. We want to be spiritual beings forever. And a spiritual being in a body in this world is said to be Techias HaMesim. quite an incredible concept. If, by the way, you haven't read Mashiach, Hope for Turbulent Times, I introduce you to some of the concepts surrounding Mashiach, and that book's available. It's on Amazon. It's on it's bookstores. Okay, it's an introduction. Okay, we'll continue. Yud Zayin, okay, 17. Al tira ki ya'ashir ish, ki yirbe kavod, base so. Okay, so fear not when a man becomes rich and when the honor of his house increases. Radak, again, don't worry if you're poor, someone else is rich. He says, don't be jealous, don't be afraid. You might even live longer than them. That's what Radak says. He says, don't worry about it. Be happy for rich people, okay, especially righteous rich people. That's really what he's saying here. Okay. Ki nafsh, I'm sorry. Ki lo v'moso yikach hakol lo yered acharav kivodo. Okay, because he will not take anything in his death, and his glory will not descend after him. And again, the kavodo, the honor and glory that they're referring to when they're referring to these people is their money, okay, their wealth. So we have to just remember what the sages said before. Okay, ki nafsho b'chayav yivarech v'yoducha ki setiv lach. Okay. For himself, he will not take, I'm sorry, because in his lifetime, he may bless, though himself in his lifetime, I'm sorry, he may bless, others will praise you, for you will benefit yourself. So I would like to read something that I found in the Art Scroll from Rabbeinu Bachya. He says that that a person is praised by all because he benefits himself in the long run. That's who really gets praise in the Jewish world. Okay, it's very interesting. So who are we praising? Someone who benefits themselves. What does that mean? Sounds selfish? No. Someone who gives tzedakah, someone who does the right thing, someone who's a good Jew, someone who tries their best in this life, someone who develops himself spiritually. That's who we praise, but ultimately that is really what benefits the person. Now, the Art Scroll commentary that I mentioned says that there's a custom in medieval France that Jews would build their dining room tables from wood, which they would use for their coffins, to signify that they take nothing with them after death, except for the charity they showed and the guests they fed at their table, the poor people they fed, basically. Okay, now, I actually know people who do this and who have pine boards or whatever as their tables on stands. Okay, they take it very seriously. They still continue this custom. It's a very beautiful custom. It's a constant reminder, especially when your table shifts. Okay. All right, let's continue. Where are we? Chaf. Tavu ador avosa ad netzach lo yiru, or it shall come to the generation, I'm sorry, it shall come to the generation of its fathers to eternity, to netzach, they shall not see light. Okay. Korach soul will never see the light. Okay. But I know that's what our sages say, but Mikubalim tell us that ultimately every single soul is going to get its tikkun and be redeemed. But why do they put themselves through that? The suffering of Sheol, the suffering of the grave. Okay, why put yourself through that? Yes, eventually you'd be redeemed. That's what the Mikubalim say. Eventually, everything has to have its tikkun. Everything has to be corrected and go back to its source. But our goal as Jews is to connect with the part of us inside us, the Nakuda Tova, to strengthen that part, to build that part, to express that part of ourselves and connect with Hashem, connect with the Jewish people, and work on all the good stuff. Remember, we're not judged for what we haven't done per se. We're judged for what we are capable of doing and what we're trying to do. Meaning that nobody is going to be judged on the fact that they didn't jump from 1 to 60. Can't go from 1 to 60. You can go from 1 to 2. You go from 2 to 3, and so on. So Rebbe Nachman always reminds us, start slow, start with a little bit. A little bit is also good. Don't worry about the things after today. Just get through today. Stay in the moment. It's so interesting. Yeah, I keep coming back to addiction with this because I know that this psalm is related to addiction, very much so. And I keep coming back to it because this idea is of living one day at a time, of getting through your desires one day at a time, okay? Not letting the desires overtake. And we all have moments where we give into them because we're human, okay? Sugar, you're trying to stay off sugar. Give a good example. Okay, you break down and you have a piece of cake at a simcha. Okay, fine. Get back on the wagon. Get back. Pull yourself together. Okay, you have a moment where you yell at someone, you say unkind words not becoming of a Jew to say. You're disrespectful to someone. Okay, apologize. Make amends. Do tshuva. And get back on track the next day or that day itself. Rebbe Nachman says you can start over again and again and again and again. He himself, he said, started over many times each day. I can say that has saved my life. Every time I fail, I think, okay, how can I fix it? And then I'm going to start over. First fix, first do tshuva, and then start over. Okay. And that's not just being kind. And that's not just being soft. That's the only way to live. Because if, a Jew believes people can change, a Jew believes in repair, and correction, and making amends to Hashem and to other people and to ourselves. And then start over. We can all do tshuva. That's why, that's why they say somebody does something bad and it's about tshuva. They do tshuva. Okay, they correct themselves. You're never allowed to mention their past to them. You're not allowed to shame them for their past. Okay, obviously you don't want to hurt them, but it's more than that. They're no longer that person anymore. They've fixed, they've corrected, they've repaired. Step by step by step, little bit by little bit by little bit. Each person only doing what where they're holding from and staying there and working on that and then going to the next level. The next level, there's no pressure, little by little. Okay, let's continue. Adam bikar velo yavin nimshal kapechemos nidmo. Again, man is glorious. He's in his glory, but he doesn't understand. He's compared to, again, the behemos nidmo, the silenced animals, the dumb animals. Rashi says man doesn't understand what true honor and glory are. Most people don't. Here, it's like not ending on this positive note that so many of our parakim, of our chapters of Tehillim ended on. It's just saying that people don't understand what true glory and honor is. I would like to add to that and say, but we do. As Jews, we do. We know all honor and glory belong to Hashem. And when we live with this in mind and we do things that bring glory and honor to Hashem, we actually get glory and honor ourselves, not that we're chasing after it, but because we're revealing Hashem's honor and glory in this world, which is one of the main reasons we're alive. We're alive to know God, say our sages, and we're alive to reveal his glory and honor in this world. And this comes from the things we do and the things we say and even the things we think and feel, okay? because that changes us. As Rebbe Nachman says, our thoughts literally create our reality. Now, we're done with that very heavy but fascinating psalm. I can't believe how many times I had to read it and really think about it and find so many interesting commentaries on it. And please Hashem, we should take the message to heart in a positive way. And this is one of so many messages that the wonderful and holy King David has left for us. And God willing, we will be able, after we imbibe these messages, and even during, while we're imbibing them, to please Hashem, experience together the coming of Mashiach and to greet him in our time. Okay, so I am going to turn off the recording. Hold on one second.